Alright, now that the live stream is over and we have confirmed information on both of these characters' kit, finally we can discuss how to build them. And just like the banners, we start off with Firefly. So in this video, we'll first discuss her overall kit, her Eidolons, then I'll show you some build options, proper rotations, and finally some potential synergies. So leave a like if you enjoyed this video and let's get started. First, a bit of an overview. Firefly is a 5-star fire unit following the path of destruction. She works as a main DPS and prefers a break focused playstyle. Looking at her base stats, it's kind of a weird roller coaster of a stat line. She has the lowest base HP in the entire game, has mid to low base attack, which doesn't really matter as break damage does not take attack as a multiplier, and she has the current highest base defense. She has 104 speed, which is not true as she gets 5 more speed from her stat bonuses. So this will become 109 speed, making her quite fast for a destruction unit. And lastly, she has a 240 energy cost ultimate, which is again might seem crazy, but she will always guarantee her ultimate after every 2 use of her skill, kinda like Jingliu, which you will hear a lot, as Firefly's playstyle is pretty much similar to Jingliu. Now let's look at her traces. We'll hop right into her skill, as her basic attack is the same old shit, and you'll never actually use it. So Firefly's skill, she consumes 40% of her HP and recovers 60% of her max energy, which is in her case will be 144 energy. So basically, with every 2 use of her skill, she will be able to generate more than enough energy for her ultimate, just like Jingliu. And with all this, she also deals fire damage to a single enemy. And after using this skill, Firefly's next action is advanced by 25%, great for faster rotations. Next we straight move on to her ultimate. This is the juiciest part of her kit. Similar to the Harmony unit Robin, Firefly enters the complete combustion state and instantly get her action advanced by 100%. So pretty much an instant turn. Her basic attack and skill will be enhanced and her speed will be increased by 60, which is a huge deal. She will literally be zooming through the action order bar. And with all this, for every attack Firefly does within this complete combustion state, that attack's weakness break efficiency will be increased by 50%, and the break damage received by the enemy target is increased by 20%, which pretty much solidifies her as a break damage dealer. Also similar to Robin, a countdown timer will appear on the action order bar that will have a fixed speed of 70, giving it an action value of 142, which is slower compared to Robin's countdown timer, which had a speed of 90. And just like her, the moment this timer takes turn, Firefly will exit the combustion state. So her whole gimmick is to take as many turns as possible before the timer goes up and land as many enhanced basics and skills on the enemies. Speaking of which, let's look at her enhanced attacks now. The enhanced basic is nothing special, it's a single target hit, which does a bit more damage. His enhanced skill though is pretty interesting. She restores 25% of her max HP and applies a guaranteed 5 weakness to a single target for 2 turns. You don't need any effect hit rate for this. And then she deals burst fire damage to 3 targets. A few interesting things about this attack is that it will take Firefly's break effect into account while calculating damage. Like here it says 0.2 times the break effect Firefly has plus 200%. So let's say if you have 200% break effect on your Firefly, then 0.2 times that will be 40% plus 200%. So the attack will deal 240% damage to the target. The max break effect that this attack will count is 360. So at most it will deal 272% damage. But do not take it as her break effect caps at 360%. Nope, all these attacks are not that important. At the end of the day, we will be building her as a break DPS, and break damage doesn't care about these multipliers. So build as much break effect as you can. Now for her talent, Firefly just takes less damage when her HP is low, and this effect is at its maximum when Firefly is in her combustion state, and her effect res is increased by 30%, which is a nice utility to have. Next, when the battle starts, if Firefly's energy is lower than 50%, she will instantly recover 50% energy for herself, which will allow her to enter combustion state in her first turn. Also, once Firefly's energy reaches 100%, she will dispel all debuffs from herself, which is again a great utility, as with this, nothing can stop her from getting into her combustion state. Finally, her technique. She lumps into the air and then stomps on the enemy, and after entering battle, she applies 5 weakness to all enemies for 2 turns and deals fire damage to them. A really good technique, especially because of the AoE fire weakness implant. As for which traits to level up first, well, her ultimate takes priority above anything else. You want to max that out first. You want to get the max 60 speed. Then you level up her talent, which is more of a utility, but it is important because it will help defensively, as Firefly mostly will be at low HP, and you obviously don't want to get one-shotted. Lastly, her basic attack and skill. Personally, I don't think you even need to level these up, as it only increases the damage multiplier, which is kinda worthless for break damage, so you can leave it at level 1 if you want, but at the end of the day, she is a damage dealer, and every bit of damage counts, so I highly advise you to max her out. Now let's look at her passives. The first one kinda makes Firefly being able to deal colorless damage, like Acheron. It allows her attacks to reduce the toughness of the enemy that do not have 5 weakness on them, but it only deals half of the original weakness damage. Her second passive allows her to deal super break damage on her own, without using Harmony MC. The damage depends on how much break effect you have, where I would recommend you to get at least 360%, and I will share some proper ways to get that, so that you guys can get a better idea. Lastly, her third passive. For every 10 attack on Firefly that exceeds 1800, she will gain 1% break effect. So like 10% break effect for every 100 attack. And since there is no cap here, you can go as high as you want. This is really helpful for getting more break effect and for people who are not going for her Lightcone, which I'll discuss more on the Lightcone section. As for her bonus stats, after maxing out her traces, Firefly gets 37.3% break effect, 18% effect res, and 5 speed. After that, let's talk about Firefly's Eidolons. Her E1 allows her enhanced skill to ignore 15% of the enemy's defense and to not consume any skill point. This is actually a great E1, and not because of the defense ignore. Firefly as a whole is a pretty SP heavy character. She wants to use her skill constantly, and when she is in a combustion state, she will use her skill even more, and that will consume a lot of skill points, which can be a pain to manage properly. But this Eidolon completely fixes that. Her E2 grants her 1 extra turn every time her enhanced basic or skill defeats an enemy, and this can occur once every turn. So if you're fighting against a boss that summons extra mobs, you can get quite a lot of extra turns, which will increase her overall damage output by a lot. Her E3 and E5 increase the level of her traces. Her E4 just gives her 50% effect res inside her combustion state, and with her talent 30% and 18% from her bonus stats, this will be 98% effect res, which can be really helpful as any kind of crowd control debuff can prevent Firefly from taking more turns inside her combustion state, and that can result in damage loss. Lastly, her E6. When Firefly is in her combustion state, her fire rest penetration is increased by 20%, and her enhanced basic attack and skill weakness break efficiency is increased by an additional 50%. And since her ultimate already gives 50% weakness break efficiency, with this it will be 100%. So Firefly will do double the amount of weakness damage to the enemies, which is more OP than you think. Super break damage actually takes weakness damage as a multiplier. So more weakness break efficiency means more weakness damage, and that means more super break damage. Overall, Firefly has some stacked Eidolons, especially her E1 and E2. I personally only recommend her E1 as it makes the most impact on her overall playstyle. Everything else just increases her damage. And if you're solely focusing on that, why not just fully get her to E6 and she will go berserk. Anyways, E1 is all I recommend if you're planning for dupes, but you guys can choose for yourselves. By the way, if you've reached to this point of the video and like what you're watching, consider subscribing to the channel, as it does help this channel grow and motivates me to make more content for you guys. Now let's see how we can build Firefly. I'm gonna start with the Lightcone first. Firefly being similar to Boothill, as both are break DPSs who needs a lot of break effect, and for that very reason, they both share some similar issues, that both don't really have good alternative Lightcones. For Firefly, obviously her signature is going to be her best in slot. It gives a ton of break effect and increases break damage taken by the enemy. Both great for Firefly, but you obviously don't need this. It's basically a static, which you can overcome with better relics. The best alternative is going to be the 4-star Misha Lightcone, as it gives a lot of break effect as well. The crit rate is kind of wasted on Firefly, but still it's a great option. But you have to get it from the gacha. So if you have this, great, but if not, then you need to look for other alternatives. And here I think Firefly is in a slightly better position than Boothill, as even though there are not a lot of destruction Lightcones that gives break effect, thanks to Firefly's passive that gives break effect based on attack, you can use Lightcones that provides a lot of attack. And for that, the Herta Lightcone on the fall of an Eon can be great. It gives up to 64% attack at S5, which is a lot. The damage boost is again not required, but it can be somewhat helpful. But if you're using this Lightcone on someone else, then the next option is going to be Clara's Lightcone. It also provides attack, and as a 5-star limited Lightcone, the base attack is also high, and it also provides some healing. Defensive stats can be helpful, as Firefly will constantly be consuming her HP. These are some of the major options that are pretty good on her, if you're not going for a signature. Other than these, just look for Lightcones that gives attack, like Under the Blue Sky, it also gives attack, or if you have the Battle Pass, then the Destruction Lightcone can be good. It's kind of a lesser version of Clara's Lightcone. And lastly, if you really don't have anything, then you can use the MOC Lightcone, Flames Afar. It provides some extra healing and some damage boost. It's not the best, but it'll work. And now that you have looked at her Lightcone options, which is going to be a better investment, her E1 or her Lightcone? Well, personally, I think a Lightcone can be a great help for building her. It's like over 24% damage increase than Misha's Lightcone, which might seem a big difference, but you can easily overcome it with better relics and supports. On the other hand, her E1 is only around 11% damage increase, but the utility it provides is huge. The ability to not consume any skill point is more cracked than you think. It can enable a lot more team variations for her, and you literally do not have to worry about any skill point management at all. That's why I personally recommend her E1 over her Lightcone. Now for her relics and ornaments. Since she only really cared about break effect, you can use any of the two sets that gives break effect, but the new set that's coming in the next patch is going to be her best in slot by far. It gives a bit of break effect with the 2-piece, and then it ignores defense based on how much break effect you have. To get the max effect, you want to reach 250% break effect, which may seem high, but if you follow the stat line that I'm going to show you, we're going to go way past that. As for her ornaments, well, once again, she needs break effect. So you guys may think of Talia, which can be great as well. As with Firefly's ultimate speed buff, activating the Talia's passive is pretty much guaranteed. But there is a better option. Instead of Talia, we're going to be using the new set that is coming with World 10. This set is perfectly made for Firefly. It increases speed by 6%, which will come in handy later, and then if you're attacking a 5 weakness enemy, then this will give you 40% break effect for one turn. And we know that Firefly applies 5 weakness to the enemy. That's why this is going to be perfect for her. You guys better be ready to start farming. Now for stats. Well, as usual for my build guides, here are 2 builds that you can take reference from. As always, everything calculated here are based on low roll substats and F2P Lightcones. So you guys will definitely able to achieve better stat line than this. As for the builds, the only difference between them is the boots. One has a speed boot and another one has an attack boot. The rest is the same. You use attack on both body and sphere with a break effect rope. For stat goals, just focus on break effect. Forget about crit rate or damage, forget about attack or even speed. Both builds are calculated with 0 speed from substats. Firefly has 109 base speed, and the extra is from the new planar set that increases speed by 6%. For a speed build, you want to aim for 3k attack and 360% break effect, and for an attack build, you go for 3.6k attack and 420% break effect. As I said, just focus on break effect. The attack will automatically reach the goal if you use 2 or 3 attack main stat pieces, so you do not have to worry about that. As for break effect, here are the ways to obtain it. You get 37% from our bonus stats, the new Relic set will give you 16%, and the planar set will give you 40%. Then 64% from a break effect rope, and I've taken 80% from substats, which is perfectly achievable, as you absolutely don't care about any other stats. And lastly, your passive. Depending on how much attack you have, you'll get more break effect. If you have 3k attack, the passive will give you about 120% break effect. Or if you have 3.6k attack for the attack build, then the passive will give you around 180%. You can get more if you have more attack. Since there is no cap mentioned in the passive, you can go as high as you want, and with all that, you can easily achieve any one of these builds. Now, why there are 2 builds? What is the difference between using a speed boot or an attack boot? Well, to explain that, let's look at our rotations, and more so, what speed actually mean for Firefly. Well, by now we understand how Firefly's ultimate works. She enters a special state and her attacks get enhanced. Then a timer starts in the action order bar, and before the timer takes turn, you want to do as many attacks with Firefly as you can. And exactly here, having a speed boot or not makes a big difference. Depending on how much speed you have, you can take certain amount of turns before the timer runs out. Normally, even with a 0 speed Firefly, like the attack build, you can pretty much guarantee 3 turns inside the combustion state. Like you can see here, the timer has a base speed of 70, giving it an action value of 142. And Firefly gets 60 flash speed increase inside her combustion state. So her speed becomes 175, giving her an action value of 56. So when you line them up, Firefly gets her first turn right in the beginning as she gets a 100% action advance. Then she takes 2 more turns at these respective action values before the timer goes at the end. And this 3-turn rotation is going to be the most basic way to play Firefly. If you want to take 4 turns, then you would need over 210 speed on your Firefly. And this is where the speed build comes up. If you just use a speed boot, then Firefly's base speed becomes 140, plus 60 from her ultimate, she already has 200% speed. She just needs 10 more. And guess who gives speed buff to the team? Yep, that's right, Ruan Mei. One thing that players often forget about Ruan Mei is that her talent gives a permanent 10% speed buff to her entire team. So with her on the team, Firefly's speed inside the combustion state becomes 211 without any speed substats from the relics, which makes her action value 47, allowing her to somehow squeeze in one last turn before the timer goes. Of course, if you can get 10 speed from the substat, then you won't need Ruan Mei. But this shows how valuable Ruan Mei is. Now both rotation works fine. If I have to choose one, the speed will provide better damage in most cases. So why did I even show the attack build? Well, because that build can outperform the speed build on certain situations. Like what if you use Sparkle on the team and she can allow Firefly to take more than 3 turns in her combustion state. And if that happens, then the attack build will outperform the speed build just because that build has more break effect and hence will deal more break damage. So both build works. The speed build is generally recommended as it's more universal. But if you are struggling to get more break effect, then using an attack boot can help you more with that. And finally, some potential team synergies. Well, in my humble opinion, there's only one way to properly play Firefly, and that's gonna be a break hypercarry team. with Firefly as the break DPS and 2 other supports with a sustain. And for that, the best team is still this: Harmony MC, Ronmei, and Gallagher. Harmony MC provides extra break effect and also adds more super break damage, as Firefly's own 50% super break damage will be added to Harmony MC's 100% super break damage, adding up to a total of 150% super break damage, which is a lot of damage. Ronmei provides a bunch of stuff. First, she increases weakness break efficiency, increasing the amount of weakness damage that Firefly does, helping her break the enemy faster, but also increases Firefly's super break damage, as the formula for super break damage takes weakness damage as a multiplier. Then she provides some speed, 25% rest penetration, and 20% break effect. All greatly increases Firefly's damage. Not to mention, she has her personal damage as well. Last is Gallagher. Well, he is just the best sustain for any break teams. He's a great SP generator, which Firefly kinda needs, as at E0, she is quite SP hungry. Gallagher also has his own damage taken debuff called Besotted that he can apply on the enemies, increasing the team's damage even more. There are a lot more utilities that these 3 supports can provide. Combining all that makes for the perfect break hypercarry team. Now there are other units that you can use instead of these characters. Of course, personally, I would always recommend using Harmony MC with Firefly. Without the HMC, her super break damage will take a pretty big hit, but Ronmei and Gallagher can be swapped for other units. Like you can use someone who can give action advance to Firefly, help her take more turns. Sparkle can be great for that, as she can also generate a lot of skill points for the team. I wouldn't recommend Bronya if your Firefly is at E0, because you will run out of skill points. But if you have Firefly's E1, then Bronya actually becomes a better option than Sparkle. As for the sustain slot, aside from Gallagher, there is one other sustain that can work greatly with Firefly: Ho-Ho. She can give team-wide energy and a lot of heal, as Firefly surely needs it. But that's not the main part. The most important thing is that she gives an attack boost to the team. And as we have established by now, more attack means more break effect for Firefly, which then results in more break damage. You can use other sustains, but they won't really provide much, other than just defense. These are all the alternatives that you can use instead of Ronmei or Gallagher, if for some reason you don't have them. And once again, I'll always recommend using Harmony MC with Firefly. Doesn't matter which team you play, always pair them together. Alas, these are all the synergies that I could think of, but if you guys have any other ideas, feel free to share them in the comments. Overall, Firefly is pretty much a combination of all the OP aspects of other characters. Like her playstyle is kinda similar to Jingliu, her ultimate is similar but better than Robin, she can apply 5 weakness to the enemies, and has some absurdly crazy buffs built into her kit. And her damage numbers are insane. At this point, she's pretty much competing with Akron for being the best DPS in Honkai Star Rail. I wouldn't say she beats Akron, because I personally think Akron still has the edge over Firefly in multi-tiger situations. But we'll see about that after a release. All in all, I think she's definitely an overpowered damage dealer. And if you are interested in playing break teams, then I definitely recommend pulling for her. And that's gonna be it for my Firefly build guide. Sheesh, this has to be one of the longest videos I've ever made on this channel. But what can I say? Firefly's kit has so much in it that no matter how much I tried, the video ended up becoming this long. But hope you guys find it helpful. Next is going to be a full build guide on Jade, so stay tuned for that. If you have any other questions about Firefly or think I've missed something in the video, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.